All right. Well, that was a fun meeting Monday. When really we conducted some business, we probably ought to really go over. But I think the highlights were really involved in the public speaking piece. I was. It was interesting that the fire department came in full force and spoke and asked for an increase, and you certainly can understand why.
Right.
And certainly sanitation spoke to that nature as well, and then a couple of others that were sort of odds and ends. But I think really the message, and I don't know how you feel. I mean, we were all receiving phone calls because we had to make that big pop in the police department. But
Right.
the point I want to make is that we really need public safety officials, and it's not just Rocky Mount; it's the entirety of the state. I mean, even Josh Stein in his most recent ad was talking about recruitment of law enforcement officers, the defund the police movement, a number of those other arrests and challenges that we've had throughout the country. I think it really has watered down the desire for folks to become police officers.
I agree. And I didn't say anything in the meeting, and I appreciated everybody that was there. I mean,
Absolutely.
and I understand because when the police, I think when it was announced we're going to receive such a bump for the patrol officers, I get that it was a shock, but I think our new city manager, Keith Rogers, I think he explained it pretty well. And it's really, and one thing that I learned because I met with them and asked the
Right.
questions why, but one of the longest cycles of training is for that entry level police officer. So that 60,000 starting pay will not occur right away for everyone. We've got a lot of vacancies, and so we have a surplus there because we have so many officers. We have a lot of vacancies. I mean,
Right.
bottom line.
So we funded the budget. I think is really
Correct.
what people need to hear, and we've not spent the money. So we've got a rollover, if you will, that's going to help fund this increase.
Right. And so I think the reason it was announced so soon is so we can start recruiting now.
Right.
And, we're getting ready to go. In fact, I received an email today, which I'm not sure what today's date is, but it's
End of
Wednesday,
April.
Wednesday, April the 27th.
Sure.
I received an email today about beginning budget meetings with the city manager.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's when we're going to learn increases. And I think there are going to be increases within the city across the board. And I think I have not seen them. Have you seen them?
I have not seen them yet.
Okay. And
No.
based on what Mr. Rogers has indicated, I think everybody is going to see some sort of increase. But one thing that, and I'm going to be kind of all over the place, but one thing that cannot be lost is this city council, was it a year and a half ago,
Right.
we did a 4.5% cost of living
That's right.
increase. And so we value all the employees,
That's
every
right.
single employee, and every single employee does a wonderful job for the city of Rocky Mount. And to your point about, our public safety officers, which includes the fire department,
That's right.
we need everyone, and we have a world-class fire department. I mean, and one of the top 1%, half of 1% in the country.
Right.
So,
So I did meet with city manager today, as I always do every Wednesday morning, and one of the things I was just asking about the fire chief, the position, it was more of
Right.
an aside than anything. He said, it is amazing the number of chiefs that have applied. Many of them are retired or recently retired, but they just wanted to come because we have such a renowned fire department.
Right.
I mean, it's a storied fire department that has been around for that way for at least 40 years plus.
Right.
I mean, and we've had just a great system through the years. And so they wanted to become, because it was Rocky Mount,
Right.
so we beat ourselves up a little bit, but we have some great things going on.
Right.
Our fire department is second to none, to your point, and that's awesome. That is absolutely awesome to see. It's awesome to be part of, and something we want to celebrate. One thing we did do and have done, maybe 2 years ago, 18 months ago, we did do a pay study for an increase, and so what happened with that 4%, if I recall, was look, we didn't have time to really massage it.
Right.
We didn't have time to really talk to department heads and wait it out to make sure it worked for us. So we just did that 4% across the board, just to kind of as a stopgap measure coming out of COVID. We understand that this is important, but I believe that pay study will show, a lot of increases in those critical departments that we feel like are important, that we know that are important, that we've got to staff for, and also for every other employee and every other great position in the city of Rocky Mount. So it's a comprehensive reset. And that's something I think has been lost in all these conversations because it is kind of a wow number, right? It's a big number. But look, we have a big need. And I'll ask anybody who's listening to the show, if you know somebody wants to be a police officer, please come. That's what we want. That's what we need. Law enforcement doesn't stop crime. It's a reactive force by nature. But having frequent patrols does help prevent some. It does push it down. And I think we saw that maybe last May. Remember, we had a couple of rash shootings, boom, boom, boom. And we called it an emergency meeting. Right. And we had a conversation about it. And the police chief went and put extra patrols in place. And we saw crime drop rather significantly. Now, it's just not sustainable. We don't have the patrol officers to be able to do that ongoing over and over and over and over. And ironically enough, the success of the event center, or the burgeoning success of the event center, has caused even more strain on the police department by virtue of having to be present for that. So interestingly enough, but I just kind of want to point that out to folks who are listening.
Yeah. And on the event center piece, we were able and have been successful in talking with Sheriff Clee Atkins, and he's been gracious enough to partner with the city of Rocky Mount. We've partnered with his department to help, with security at the event center, because it is in Edgecombe County. It's an important part of the city of Rocky Mount and Edgecombe County and the region. So I'm happy for that. And then going back to the fire department, we need those folks too.
Absolutely.
Those men and women, and they do a great job. And I hope, and my prayer is that they realize that. Every employee at the city of Rocky Mount realizes they're valued, and every citizen as well. It's just sometimes you have to do something a little different and unorthodox because of what you're facing right then. But I think in a few short months, we'll be appreciating them.
I do too, and I believe it'll all level out. I think folks are going to get to where they need to be. Just need to hold the faith for a little bit.
Right.
But here again, we clearly have an immediate need in police academy recruits and recruits as a whole.
Right.
So we've got to try to incentivize that to the extent we can almost immediately. And I keep reminding people, the polls that I've done, both when I was running for mayor, interim polls and surveys, and when I was running for Congress, it showed up that 65% of our African-American community believes that violent crime is the number one issue. And 50% of our Caucasian population believes the same thing. Now, it doesn't really define what violent crime is and what that means to the individual, but my point is that it is top of mind awareness for everybody who lives in the city of Rocky Mount. So it's important that we respond to that. Right. And number two, I don't even remember what it was, but it was a distant two. I mean, in 3 and 4. I mean, they were huge gaps. So I think the city manager's seeing those issues. He is addressing those issues. Perhaps it was bold, but you know what? We're kind of at a time where I believe the bold steps are appropriate.
Right. And just to add on to what Keith Rogers, city manager, did, 2 weeks ago we had an in-Kempa meeting, and they're held in Wilson, and you've got a lot of the leaders throughout Eastern North Carolina there, and several people came up to both of us, and the city manager of Wilson even said, "Well, you're putting us in a bind, and we're probably." You've accelerated this by about 2 years, because based on his comments was, we're probably within 2 years of having to raise it to that level anyway.
Sure.
So from a perspective from Rocky Mount, there's a lot of conversation within that community, and it's going to attract a lot of folks, I think, to the city of Rocky Mount.
Well, I mean, everybody nationally is going to have to incentivize folks to become law enforcement officers, because there is just a shortage nationwide, and it's either going to be pay or it's going to be other challenges.
Yeah, and I think you and I would both agree. I might be speaking for you, but same thing with teachers.
Absolutely, no, 100%. No, absolutely. We've got to recognize that. Now, it comes to teachers, I think there's a whole nother series of challenges. We're
Right.
asking them to raise our children, and the
Correct.
system's not designed to do that. But yeah, good gosh, that's a whole separate
Yeah.
show of which we would get so many arrows when it's all said and done.
Yeah.
But we'll move on.
But the city, we're no longer involved in the education of children right now.
No,
so.
we're not. But and this is another aside. But I'm not sure it's not appropriate for us to try to figure some way to incentivize teachers within our community, because it's in our best interest.
Sure.
If you educate folks, it should reduce crime. It should give folks an opportunity to have a better living and a better way of life, and it's so integral, so important to our community as a whole that I just don't know how we can
Right.
just sit to the sideline completely.
And it's
But I
just-
don't have the answer either.
Right, and education is an economic development tool, because companies, when they locate, they look at how's your education system,
Absolutely.
how's your
100
schools.
Absolutely. I hear that over and over and over. And when we start talking about where people want to live, they want to live where there's an education, a great system in
Right.
place. And look, there's no secret. You look at the tier 1 counties to the tier 3 counties. Tier 3 counties seem to have better educational systems, right?
Right.
Because they've got more tax dollars to work with. I mean, it's
Correct.
just the reality. And we need to figure out how to level that playing field too.
I agree.
I know you do. Amen, brother.
Amen.
So anyway, we went through the consent agenda, and were there any things in there that were kind of of impact or notice to you that felt like we ought to kind of highlight here?
Mayor, I think we've got a Mason and Pierce and Arrow Road. No, excuse me, that was annexations. We're paving some dirt roads. I think I've got to find them on here. I had them earlier, and I apologize, but we're paving some dirt roads which are desperately needed. And
Well, that is something that I've been working on, I know, for at least 3 years to to get it into the CIP, the capital improvement plan,
Right.
and then to actually get it funded, and then the engineering to work.
right,
That's no small task, but it's amazing to me we still even had dirt roads within the city limits.
right. And another big one was we modified electric service agreement with Hubble, going from 900 kilowatts to 2,000 kilowatts, which is a huge increase, and kudos to them, and appreciation for adding to our revenue for our electric department. It's about estimated about $300,000 a year, which is
Right.
which is a nice thing. I think that's interesting.
Those 2 dirt roads were Louis Lane and Triple Court.
Okay.
So LLC to Fred Smith and Company, the construction company out of Raleigh.
And I think one to Weaver.
That's right. Weaver's Asphalt.
Asphalt. And then just the last thing on our agenda was the 3.935% financing with I forget what the name of the bank was, but it was for $3.125 million, and that's for the Denton Street pool and the business service center improvements and the warehouse improvements. So that's a really good interest rate.
It is. It's a fantastic interest rate, and finance team clearly did a
Right.
great job.
They did.
Another thing is that we often don't talk about, the city of Rocky Mount is actually in great financial shape. I think maybe, there may be some challenges with the CAFA this time related probably to procedure, because we've had so many holes in our staffing. But fund balances are strong. I mean, we're not overspending. We really have been pretty conservative.
Right.
We're paying for capital improvements with cash, not with debt. And a lot of cities are do it with debt. So you end up in this vicious cycle if you're not careful.
Right.
So anyway, a lot of good things happening in that regard.
Yeah. And one interesting thing that the city manager told, I think he told all of us, but I think was really kudos to him. He's coming from Virginia, and,
Right.
and I think North Carolina is one of the few states in the union that has an LGC, the Local Government Commission.
I didn't realize that until I was talking to Keith as well.
And he went to Raleigh and met with him and
Yeah.
said, "Hey, I'm searching for a finance director. I want you to know where we are." And I like that. He's being proactive, and LGC, they look at all our debt. We have to, in fact, this financing has to ultimately be approved by
Right.
them, even though the city council voted in favor of. But kudos to Mr. Rogers for going to Raleigh and being proactive, and we need that.
Absolutely. And I do appreciate that as well, because we've not, traditionally we've had some challenges with the LGC, the city has. And so just going and facing and dealing with the white elephant in the room. Hey,
Right.
what's going on?
Correct.
As a caveat to that, when I was talking to him this morning, he was saying, well, the LGC first told me we don't want to take over a city. It is not our desire to do that at all. We want the cities to do exactly what they're doing and do it well. So there's not this bent to the list of trying to take folks over. They would prefer to keep us in between the canals, as my father used to say.
Right. And for clarification, that's other cities.
That's
Rocky
right.
Mount's not even.
No, we're not. We're not. Absolutely. Thank you for saying that. I mean, you're right. No, the city of Rocky Mount is in great financial health.
Yeah.
I'm proud of that fact, and it's a testament to many city managers, many finance directors, and to councils for years. I mean, this didn't just occur. So one of the priorities when I was talking to the manager, and I probably should let him speak on this, but he mentioned it the other night, is that he would like to have a AAA credit rating for the city of Rocky Mount. Now, we are like AA2 something. I don't know. We are mighty high. But the impact of moving from where we are to, say, AAA in terms of money that we can borrow stretches those dollars even further along.
Right.
And again, that kind of forethought on how do I lay the groundwork to be able to maximize the opportunities that we have before us in the city, that shows a lot of initiative, a little understanding of what's going on, a great tactician mind, and a little bit of strategic thinking. And, I'm like, wow, I appreciate that. I really do.
So far, I've been very impressed. He's only been here short 5 weeks.
5 weeks, 6 weeks, something like that. It's March 6th, whatever that works out to be.
So, but along the same lines, which will save, what you're essentially saying is going to save us money in interest expense. But the other thing that the city has saved not only lives on, but also money for homeowners and for businesses. We're talking about the fire department.
Right.
That rating that we have that really few organizations within the United States have, that saves us on our homeowners insurance and our liability insurance with our companies.
I'll give you an exact example of that. So my house in Rocky Mount, because I have fire insurance like everybody else, that number for me is about $600 a year, $700 a year. I had a house in the mountains, and that number, because it was the worst rated fire department, but it was volunteer fire department down the road. I mean, just lots of inherent issues. That same fire insurance was $3,200.
Oh, my word.
I mean, just because of the response time saving a property. So I don't think folks really appreciate the impact that's having to each one of us individually. It's big.
That's like 5 times if I'm
it's
doing my
big.
math right.
You're right. It's big. It's big. And so that's just something I want to underscore for everybody to understand.
Yeah.
So we got the retreat coming up in
Right.
Durham, and I'm not sure exactly where it's going to be. We haven't seen the schedule on that yet, but I anticipate we're talking about affordable housing and again,
Right.
and a little bit of budget stuff. And so hopefully we'll be able to begin some of at least the capital improvement
Right.
budget, at least list those out and go from there and see where the money comes from.
One thing that when we were talking about the CIP recently, the CIP basically that's capital improvement projects, and that's stuff like water and sewer we put in there, or even big trucks.
Dare I say at a courthouse?
Well, like fire trucks, and
Sure.
then your garbage trucks and stuff. The city council, the current city council, and previous city councils,
Right.
I want to clarify, have put things such as fire trucks and garbage trucks in there, but for whatever reason, they were not acted upon.
Right.
And one of my requests is to have a section within the CIP that shows anything that was in the CIP that was not met or done, because we didn't find out we had trash or garbage issues
Right.
until people started complaining.
That's right.
And
That's
so,
right.
and that's not a good thing. We need to be proactive, both with, because now we've got them on order. We've received some, but, we're looking 24 months out for a lot of these big ticket items, just for the nature of COVID coming up. And no one expected COVID, but hey, it's here, or was here.
Well, that's right. And then we were having to deal with separate shifts. We had divided it's particularly services like that into 2 teams and isolated those teams so that there wouldn't be any cross contamination if somebody were getting infected by COVID, and to keep people in the workforce.
But the other thing the reason I say that is, one, we need to be aware as a city council and as a mayor,
Right.
we all need to be aware. But the other thing is, I want a workforce, because coming from Monday night's meeting, it was mentioned a couple of times about not having the tools. I want to be clear.
Mm-hmm.
This city council and previous city councils, along as with you and then Mayor
Right.
Combs before, we we want to have the tools that the fire department and the sanitation and the police department needs, and we're going to do everything we can to do it. That was something that was missed that we were not aware of,
Right.
but we're keenly aware of it now. And I dare say it's going to happen again, or very less likely that'll happen.
No, I think that's right. I mean, Keith mentioned that was something that he would absolutely do so that we would know. It's also important to know that just because it's in the CIP doesn't mean it's funded.
Right.
So, things that are funded, should be paid for and on the list, but just because it's on the list doesn't mean that you're so ideally you're kind of moving up every year and you're able to pick up projects unless there's something that prioritizes on top of it. So I don't know why we didn't end up with fire trucks and trash trucks.
Yeah.
My guess is some supply chain issues with COVID, I'm guessing maybe we could save some money, but anyway, it did put us in a hurt, but it was funded. It was funded, and it was intended that we should never be there. So, so you can't blame the council on that one.
Well, it's also my understanding, and I appreciate Mr. Rogers for our retreat. It's my understanding Davenport and Company, which is our finance, they do the projections and tell us how much money we have, how much money we're projected to have. They're going to be involved for you and for the council to ask questions, which I think is, I like that. And I appreciate having that accessibility during the retreat with them.
Right. Because one of the things that's particularly important as we go through the budget, by increasing salaries, that's a permanent ongoing expense. That's not a one and done. It's not like a truck. Yeah. Once you paid for it, you paid for it. Maybe there's a little bit of maintenance. This is ongoing forever and ever and ever. So to see what the impact of that will be relative to our tax revenues coming in, how we're going to manage that, is something that's important. I believe that we're going to be in great shape. There's no real concerns flagging right now, but it's always unsettling to not have the visual of the impact that it has going forward until you do. But we should be able to tie a bow around that within the next month or two. And so we're starting that process next week. So I'm too encouraged and excited about that. Right.
So, but it'll be an exciting time. And, be curious to see what all is in front of us at the retreat.
It will be. And then, of course, we have our May 8th meeting. So it's we're going to have a lot of together time for the 4th through the 8th. But anyway, we've done it many times before.
That's right. That's right. So do we want to touch on you mentioned the courthouse. I mean,
sure, we can talk about that. We've been to Raleigh and asked for some money, and we'll see if that happens or not. I mean, I believe it's been included in the budget. As I understand it, what happens on that, as well as some other asks that we've made, is that it'll be included in the House budget, and then the Senate budget will be passed, and they'll hammer it out in conference. And so whether these local projects get any funding or see the light of day, we really don't know.
Right.
But I know this for sure. If you don't ask, it never will come.
Right. And that's the sole reason of going to Raleigh was, hey, we have this need, and we're one of the few municipalities within the state of North Carolina that this happened back in, I think, 1968, 69.
63, I believe, is the right. I don't know. It's
long time ago.
Before me, that's all I know.
Which is definitely before me.
Did you call that BS, I guess, before Sandy?
Before Sandy, yeah. Okay. So, But the important thing about the judicial system, I think it can be an economic engine to downtown, because you'll bring masses of people to support the businesses that don't get support during the week, frankly, because Event Center is, from basically a Friday through a Sunday, maybe a Thursday through a Sunday. And so that's one piece there, but it also brings a lot of traffic, which will help bring up the numbers that you need if you are looking to even invest in downtown, because, quite frankly, the bottom line is what drives someone to open a business downtown. And the other thing is, a lot of folks are talking about the judicial system. Why do we need that? Well, it also speeds up the process.
That's right.
Because you're going to, if you get a ticket, you're going to court somewhere.
You are. That's not going away.
Yeah, that's not going away. And I dare say Nash County or Edgecombe County could handle the volume coming either way from the city of Rocky Mount.
Well, they'd have to add additional courtrooms too to make that happen. I mean, I believe that's what I've been represented, at least by our judges in the story.
Right.
You're right. I mean, So one of the things I've heard is, well, you're only moving at 6 blocks or 8 blocks or something of that nature. But the proximity to businesses and the impact of that local traffic to restaurants and to other services downtown, I think would be pretty impactful.
Right.
I have no idea what the case volume is. I did see a study, and probably should have brought that here to go over those. Maybe we'll do it next time.
Right.
But it's a lot of people that cycle through that courtroom
Right.
on a daily basis.
Right. And I saw the same thing. And so, and you're talking to a guy who's fiscal
I know.
conservative, and I don't want to spend a dime really on anything, but I see, we've invested in the event center.
Right.
And a lot of people are talking about parking garage, and this is not part of a parking garage.
Right.
But to justify a parking garage, you need the volume, the numbers of people, the masses of people. And I think if you coupled it with the judicial system, and you're looking at the safety of employees, you're looking at the proximity for our residents.
Right.
And I think people need to look beyond, and it will open up the Cokie Road, the current judicial system for potential
housing
housing.
redevelopment.
Right.
We can repurpose that
So,
in some other way.
The reason I bring that up is because it seems to be the last 2 meetings, and I understand the concern.
Right.
And quite frankly, I think some of the concern that's being articulated at the meetings were the same concerns I had about the event center.
Right.
So I have to chuckle when I hear those. And but hey, the event center's here.
It is,
and we got to make it work. So
there's no other option at this point.
And so this judicial center might be one of those things that's going to help it work. And if we can get the money from Raleigh, it's just going to reduce the cost on the city of Rocky Mount.
And that's the whole point. So let's see if it happens. If it doesn't, then I know that the city doesn't have $35 million to put into a courthouse at this point in time.
No.
And so we'll just have to see how important that is to us ultimately.
Right. Well,
but the other important thing that folks need to understand is that the budget is set now for the next 2 years. This is a long session. So the time to ask is now.
Right.
If we miss this window, it'll be 2 years before we have the opportunity to even ask again. So I don't think folks completely understand that because it matters. It matters a lot. Yeah,
it matters a lot. And, I know it was just a few of us that went, but all we're doing is just asking for money. We don't, even if we received it or don't receive it, we don't have. It's not pegging us to anything.
It's not a controllable. That's right. It's an ask. That's all it is.
Yeah. So,
well, Councilman, we've run out of time. I tell you what, I think we've covered a lot of large swath of real estate today. And anyway, for a meeting that seemed short, it was pretty long. Certainly in a closed session, but I felt like we covered a lot of great stuff. Got a lot of good things done.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Mayor, and just echo what we said earlier. Kudos to City Manager Keith Rogers. 5 weeks in, I'm impressed.
Me too. 2 thumbs up, right?
Yes, sir.